welcome back to Talking Ted, Pop Cult X show, where we talk about all things Ted Lasso. My name is Danny, and along with Tori, we're here chatting about episode 9, which is titled La Locker Room à Folles, which, is a play on the French musical, the La Cage à Folles, which, the Crazy Cage, or I'm pronouncing these completely awful.
I can't pronounce
bear
it
with
either.
me.
You're doing better than me, so you go ahead.
So we, as you can imagine, it's probably the crazy locker room, right? So it falls right into there, and it was such a. I'll start right off the bat. Chuck Hayward, is that his name? Chuck Hayward. I think I got that.
Yes.
Who wrote the episode? The writing was just spot on. It was perfect. It was so wonderful, and I just want to take a moment before we dive into the episode, and I bring that up only because we here at Pop Cult X support the Writers Guild of America in their strike. And it's just, we just want to show our support. And I think it's very important that these writers are giving us all this great material and are asking for very little, if you think about it, in terms of money in return from the producers and whatnot and the production houses. And it's just something that without the writers, we wouldn't have this show. So it's we need to support them any way we can, whether it's just, speaking out in social medias, or I think there's some different funds that are taking in donations to help supplement those writers who are more affected than others during the strike, to help supplement them with food and whatnot. So find out what you can and go support them.
Go support them. I mean, if you're able to and willing to, go join them on the picket lines. They're out there in the middle of the day, striking, talking to people, explaining that it's really not that much that they're asking for. So, we definitely support them. I'm a writer myself. I'm not a part of that union, but being a writer, I don't know what I would do without this livelihood. So, definitely support them. And the Ted Lasso writers are incredible. And thank goodness Ted Lasso season 3 is already written, done, and wrapped, because, this strike is going to be affecting so many shows and movies and series, not just, you have no idea how big of an impact the writers make in this industry. So go support them, because we do. And it's the right thing to do. It's a no-brainer.
Completely agree. And I think I even saw that Jason Sudeikis was on the pick and line. So
he was, and
so
Brett.
Cool.
They went out in front of was it Paramount, I think?
Okay.
But yeah, Brett Goldstein and Jason Sudeikis, a lot of SNL alums are joining them, and famous actors and celebrities, as they should, because these shows wouldn't be what they are without the writing staff. And oftentimes a lot of the actors were on the writing staff. So,
true.
They're not asking for a lot. They're just asking for a little bit, just what's fair. So,
that's true. What's fair. Exactly. Yeah. They deserve to be able to make a living with their words that are creating such magical worlds for us to enjoy, like this episode. So let's dive in a little deeper. This episode, like I said, was just fantastic. We learned a lot about Colin and Isaac's friendship. We saw Rebecca get back to her boss ways.
Yes.
And we saw the magic of total football in its purest form. So go ahead and start us off. What did you think about the overall feel of this episode?
Oh my gosh, man. I think this episode was, 1, a long time coming, and 2, so necessary for the current environment that we're in. I mean, not just the current environment. This episode would have been perfect 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think it hit some hard topics that people have difficulty talking about. And we sort of mentioned it last week, and I think the week before, but, really just LGBTQ plus representation in the sports world. And not just in the sports world, but the difficulties of coming out as a person who identifies, someone who's LGBTQ plus, just how emotional something like that can be, and taxing and draining, and not just on you, but like very clearly it affects other people as well. And so I think this episode addressed a lot, and we needed it. And our country and our world needs an episode like this because, you know, I had a friend who came out to only me and didn't feel comfortable coming out to anyone else. And you know, that secret becomes your secret too, because it's not my place to share something like that.
Right.
And so this episode really addressed what it's like for someone to have that and then someone else to then find out and how much of an impact it can make. So you want to start us off on, you know, maybe the beginning with Isaac and what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, we see the episode starts off, we see a joyful, you know, intro musical music, and we see them playing a little scrimmage match with the team, and everyone's having fun. You see they're enjoying it again. So that's great to see. And we see Isaac score a goal at the end of the match. And then Colin comes up to congratulate him, and he like just brushes him off. So we see that rift forming. And we know from the previous episode where Colin or Isaac ripped his phone out of his hand that there was some tension there because of what he saw on the phone. So, and we didn't quite know how it was going to play out. But that rift continues throughout the whole episode until the very end, which we'll get to. We can get to it later on, but it continues throughout the whole episode. But I think the actors Billy Harris and Columbo Keeney were just fantastic in this episode. Their performances were nuanced. They were just very I don't know, they just brought a dynamic to it, and their relationship, which we learn more about through this episode. And they just did a great job. So I just wanted to give them a quick kudos. But as the episode went along, and of course, during the match where Colin finally, should we talk about it now? Colin comes out to his team. Isaac rushes into the stand to deal with an unruly fan. Now, we don't know why at the time, why he did that, whatnot. We just knew that he was angry, and it got the best of him, and he crossed that line, which, you know, professional athletes aren't supposed to cross, but he did. And I think the way they addressed it with Roy talking to Isaac was perfect.
Yes.
It was just so well done. And of course, with the spot of humor with Will, the kit man, being in the room, and he chimes in as he's cleaning off a cleat. Yeah, you know, he's right. And he talks about snowflakes on a mountain and an avalanche one sneeze away.
That was so good. This episode, I'm like, just give everybody an Emmy, just give everybody some sort of award because they've all earned it at this point.
Yeah. It was just so, because he seems to be like the invisible man, so to speak. People don't realize that he's there, and he just chimes in at the most either opportune time or inopportune time, depending on how you look at it. And then, of course, you want some bubble gum?
Yeah.
Don't push it. That was hilarious.
It is perfect, though, because I feel like this was even a reoccurring theme when Nate was the kit man, too.
True.
But we see it's sort of, you know, comedic relief, right?
Yeah,
these
he's
very
breaking
big
that tension.
Bombshells are dropping, and then he just happens to be there every time. But this is kind of the first time where he's like, you know what, this has happened enough times. I'm just going to say my little bit here and then like actually help. And so I love that he actually said something back instead of just being like awkward and like, I'm not supposed to hear this. Like he's kind of a part of the team now and he can give advice. So I loved that. But back to what you were saying, right? So we see Isaac charge the stands. I thought the way Ted Lasso handled this was incredible, right? Because we can hear a fan yelling at Isaac, but you know, we're thinking that he's mad at Colin, like, right? Yeah. He's just upset at him, and we're led on to think that maybe he's upset at him because he's gay.
Yeah.
But then we see a fan kind of heckling him, and then the way that the editors and the audio tech and team did this was just so beautiful. You know, just congrats to them. They sort of cut it off right before he says the word, you know? And for those that don't know what we're talking about the F word, the other F word.
Right.
And, you know, it's a very derogatory term for someone who is gay. And that just causes Isaac to lose it. Yeah. And so it's kind of interpreted that that's the word that he says. Isaac jumps into the stand, starts beating this guy up, gets a red card. He's kicked out of the game. Obviously, he's out of the entire game. So when they head into the locker room, everyone's confused. But, you know, like you said, Brett sits down with him and talks to him. He's like, hey, man, I know that this was more than just you being upset at a fan.
Right.
You know, whatever it is, that's the real problem. You need to address that, or else it's going to basically destroy you or destroy that friendship or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So he doesn't necessarily know what's going on, but I thought it was a great speech. And then while that's all happening in the other room, you know, before this speech, Isaac walked out and he goes, you guys never know, you know, this guy said something horrible. This is what he said. And you just never know if one of us on the team is gay. Right. And so everyone sort of thinks, oh my gosh, maybe Isaac's gay.
Like, right.
He's gay. Like, we got to go stand up for him. And I love that was their response. Like, oh my gosh, what if it's Isaac? We got to, because Colin was sitting there listening to all that. Right. You see the wheels turning in his head. Like, all right, I'm going to see how they respond if they think Colin's gay or if they think Isaac's gay, and like kind of go from there. Right.
Yeah.
And so he sees the team be very supportive and uplifting. And he's like, eventually stands up and says, you know what? Hey, it's not Isaac. It's me.
Yeah.
And this was like, I don't know about you, but I was like, literally physically went, oh. Like, I felt like, and I know this is how he probably felt too, you know, like it's out.
That's true.
You know, I can breathe. It's the world is off my shoulders. Like, I can breathe. And the team's response to that even further, right? We already knew they were going to be supportive. We had an idea. And the whole time we saw Trent kind of look in there, and he still didn't give Colin away. But seeing the team really rally around him and support him in that moment, that very vulnerable moment, was, I mean, I almost teared up and cried. I mean, Ted's speech, I'm sure you want to talk about that.
Yes,
you
I
go
do.
ahead, because I think you can explain it better than I can.
Okay, so Ted's speech, when after basically, like you said, Colin came out and the rest of the team was saying, oh, we don't care, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and Ted's like, well, hold on a second. That's not right. We do care. And I thought that was so powerful. And then he gives a whole speech about his friend from middle school being a Denver Bronco fan and not being there to support him. And he uses that as a metaphor to how it's not that we don't not care. We do care. And, you know, you no longer have to go through that alone, what you must have been going through. You no longer have to go through the alone. We're here for you. And I thought it was such a moving testament to how Ted, you know, sees the world, because he wants to be there to support everyone. And, you know, and I thought that was just so wonderful. And of course it was capped off with a comedic bit. It's like, Ted, did you just compare me being gay to a Denver Bronco fan?
And then, of course, Jamie and them are like, who are the Denver Broncos? He's like, it's American football. Never mind. You guys don't care. Whatever. But it kind of was a perfect metaphor, though, you know, especially for us at home, right? This show is not written for people in London, right? This show is written for Americans. I mean, and I'm sorry if we have any listeners in London. We love you.
Not for you.
But I mean, the truth is, it is a very Americanized show taking on topics that are global, right? But specifically very hard-hitting issues here in the United States. And this masculinity, you know, the audience might be able to understand a Denver Broncos metaphor better than a gay footballer coming out.
Yeah.
And supporting them, right? You're going to go to that tailgate with them, even if they're a team that you don't support, because you love them. And I just thought it was such a perfect, honestly, probably my second favorite speech from this entire series. I would say it was my second favorite, almost first favorite, but definitely second. And he just nailed it on the head. And of course, they stood up for him and they loved him just like we thought they would. And I just thought it was just the icing on top. I mean, that's exactly how that scene should have gone. However, it breaks my heart to know that in real life, that's not how it goes for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of pain, and there's a lot. I mean, some people get kicked out of their households and excommunicated from their family. So although this was best case scenario, the reality is it's not always met with such positivity. So it does show how big of an impact, Ted has had and on the team. But I think that the team already, they were good people in the first place. So, I mean, I think this was obviously very much the biggest theme of the episode, but not necessarily the only theme. I think we saw a lot of other things going on, specifically with Roy and Rebecca.
Yes, that was
and
great.
A press conference, which I thought was another one of his shining moments. So if you want to talk about that.
Well, I think so earlier in the episode, Rebecca had asked Roy to do a press conference to cover for Ted, who was getting on a Zoom call to talk about his son Henry's failing science class or something. So of course, Roy being Roy, he didn't show up to the press conference, and we cut to Coach Beard sitting at the mics, getting in an argument over the greatest classical rock guitarist of all time. And I thought that was hilarious. And him and one of the reporters are going back and forth. And it was just perfect for Coach Beard, because that's who he is.
But I wonder how much of that was scripted versus how much of that might have just been like an outtake of like Brendan was just sitting on the set and like they were just talking and they're like, you know what, this stuff's good, just keep rolling. Like,
it could be, yeah. I mean, it feels like it was just something like, oh, we're waiting for Roy to get here. Let's try and warm up the crowd here. Okay, any questions? And the guy's like, who's the greatest guitarist? And then it went from there. Yeah, I could definitely see that. That's hilarious.
But I love that they still, even after Rebecca came, they still asked her
the same question.
Same question. So you're kind of like, all right, was it an accident? Or like, are they just trying to figure out this answer? and I love that she answered.
Yeah.
Higgins. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. So sorry, continue.
And then of course, after that press conference, Rebecca storms off to the training room where Roy's at and yells at him and get to my office, meet me there, get your hairy arse to my office.
Yes!
And Rebecca going back to being the boss lady. I thought it was so great to see that. Of course, Roy couldn't just leave the locker room without scolding the players. He's like, all of you've seen me naked and you know that I don't have a hairy arse, and none of you stood up for me.
Such an unnecessary line, but I'm so glad that they put that in there because I was literally rolling on the floor. I was like, and then their response too, they're like, Isaac very seriously like, he's right. We're cowards. That's freaking comedy. That is comedy. So, it's just a perfect moment. It was very reminiscent of the Zava moment in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right?
Very
like
true.
Rebecca, this is her team and she's got to step up because yes, Roy's a good man and a good coach, but at the end of the day, he bailed and that's not going to fly. So I love that she stood up. And her speech to him in the office, I know you were going to continue on.
Oh, I was just going to say that speech was great, telling him basically to get out of his own way, to, stop making the mistakes. And I don't remember the word for word of it, but it was just a very powerful knock it off, stop it, basically cut the crap. And, because she knows all that's going on between him and Keely and where Keely's at with Jack and how now their break has turned into an up, as she put it. So, so it was a really great speech from Rebecca. I think that was really reclaiming her power and her bossness.
Yes. I mean, she is. I think the beginning of the season, we were a little skeptical because she was seeming kind of whiny and a little bit pathetic, when it came to, I got to beat Rupert this, got to beat, but I think she's really had her shining moments here this season and really stepping up as taking ownership of the team and being a leader, not just like a owner that sits in the office. These are her team. This is her people. And I believe the term that she said was, without saying it, you're serving yourself a bowl of crap and complaining about the portions. You know,
That's true.
She knows that he wants more. I think she sees more potential in him. Like this dude, Ted's not going to be here forever. This dude could potentially be the head coach one day.
Yeah.
You know, but he just quits when it gets hard, you know? And so
yes. And when it's no longer fun. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I love that she called him out about that and that he knew she was right. So he kind of walked out of the office with that feeling of like, you know what? F it. She's right. But I'm not going to admit it. You know, I'm just going to walk out politely and, you know, grumbly.
And she told him to stop moping around too.
Yes.
So I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Yes. Because there's a difference between, you know, not necessarily being this pep and step, but also, you know, between being someone who brings other people down around them.
Yeah.
So he can be his grumpy self. That's fine. But the issue is when it's more than that and it starts bringing people down. And so I thought it was just brilliant. Again, great writing from the writers on the show right there. These 2 speeches were just incredible. I don't know how people come up with this stuff.
And let's turn it into 3 speeches real quick. We're going to fast forward to the end press conference where Roy does show up.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
He delivers a fantastic press conference. And we see Rebecca in the background, happy for him, not just proud of herself or, you know, but just happy that he's becoming the person that she knew he could be. Right. Because he tells a speech about the former footballer who he cracked a joke about. And it was in response to why Isaac did what he did. And he says that, you know, he was going through the stuff and we're people. We're not just footballers. We're people. And we have stuff that we're going through that we don't know about. And that's why Isaac did what he did. It's none of my business. So I thought that was really cool. I love how he called New Trent.
New Trent. I like it better than the old Trent.
Old Trent, yeah. Like he has nicknames, it seems like, for all the reporters.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. And yes, I mean, you're right. A third speech in this, a third powerful speech. Kudos to the writing team. My goodness. But not just that, but can we just sit here for a second and look back at the topics that is encompassing of Ted Lasso, right?
Yeah.
People think that this was just going to be some silly little American football coach heading to go coach soccer in London show. Okay. We have covered suicide, depression, anxiety, therapy, you know, toxic masculinity, coming out, you know, LGBTQ professional athletes, you know, dirty oil money, ripping poor countries off.
Yeah.
Okay. Periods. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. And then in this case, you know, a miscarriage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are hard topics that people don't talk about. And it's right out here in the open.
Right.
And what a great way to deliver all of these things, because we hide them away like they are embarrassing or not normal or shameful.
Yeah.
And
true.
this show and these writers and these actors and these brilliant editors and everybody else involved is normalizing these things because they are normal and they happen and they're real and they're heavy, and that's okay. Because life is messy. And the reason that he told that story, right, was because his teammate's wife was pregnant, and he made a joke, you know, cracked a joke about Roy being the father. You know, I was the father, and the guy beat him up, and he never knew why. The guy was kicked off the team, and ultimately his entire career was
blacklisted.
ruined.
Yep.
And we find out, you know, they meet each other in a pub a couple months later, and the guy says, "Hey man, like, I reacted that way because my wife had a miscarriage and we hadn't told anybody yet."
Right.
That's real life.
Yeah, it is.
That's real life. People go through these things every day and you have no idea. And so, I mean, just to even address that, I think it's been a very taboo subject. And so it makes me really happy seeing them confront this head on, like, hey, this stuff happens all the time. And so, yeah, I mean, what a powerful speech, what a powerful episode, what a powerful show. I can't even
seriously.
This for people who say that this season has been the worst one yet. I'm like,
They're not paying attention.
Man,
Yeah.
you're not paying attention because this show was never meant to just be an SNL skit.
Right.
Right? Like they had deeper plans for this show years ago. So, I mean, my goodness, I don't know what else to say from here. I'm fired up now. Shoot, I'll run through a wall for Jason Sudeikis. I'm ready.
Right? Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, I mean, that was a great response to the press, and I think you even saw in the press, the journalist's face, like he's right. Like, Isaac was a human being. We kind of feel foolish for asking the question, why now? And it's wrong because, like, I'm a journalist and I got to ask some of these questions too. But maybe with different framing now, So anyways, I think it was cool that Roy stood up for Isaac and did not, disclose. He really didn't know what was happening.
Yeah. I think his last line that he said was very powerful to me. He said, we don't know what Isaac's going through. None of my business, but I choose to give him love. I thought I was like, wow, that's powerful. That was really great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we saw a team united,
definitely.
And that reminds me of that episode where they got all the ghosts out of the training room.
Yeah.
And they're just standing around the fire and they're hanging out by the fire. And Danny Rojas brings out his mezcal and Rebecca's looking at them bitterly. Right. And she says, well, that sure is a team united. But I think season 3, Rebecca would be saying that with a very different connotation.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyways, so enough of that. Let's move on. Another massive storyline here. Rupert.
Yes.
Nate. Jade. Okay. I'm just going to leave it with those 3 names.
There you go. We can stop. Or as her mom called her, jaded, right? Short
jaded.
For jaded.
Oh, that was so perfect. That was so perfect. Oh my gosh. So for those of y'all, who saw the episode, right? We're talking about when Nate is chilling in his office and his girlfriend, of course, new girlfriend, Jade, walks in and brings him none other than Taste of Athens. His favorite restaurant, also the restaurant where she works at. Well, it's just a sweet moment. I mean, everyone online saying that she's a gold digger or, she only likes him because he's rich now and famous. I don't see it like that. I think the issue was he used to try to come in with this, hey, I'm this confident dude attitude, and I'm all that, whistling at his parents, demanding the table by the window. I think it might have been off-putting for her at first. And I think, like, as a girl, maybe if I saw a guy acting like that too, maybe I would be off-put. But throughout time, she has seen him be more and more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. I think he was very vulnerable with that date where he got denied. Right. And she saw that and she saw how he handled that. And so I think it was like a slow burn. But I don't think that she's a gold digger per se. And she's bringing him lunch in his office. Okay. Like that's really just a sweet, genuine thing to do.
Yeah. It
so
is.
I'll let you talk about what happens when our dear friend Rupert walks in.
Okay. So Rupert doesn't barge in, but enters his office, sees them there. And it looks like he's immediately, as Rupert is, drawn to her, as he's drawn to most women, it seems. So, and I think Nate kind of sensed that a little bit in that he sees the interaction between the two, and he's kind of like, I don't want to say off-put by it, but he kind of senses that there's something maybe a little more nefarious there going on than just a normal normal meet and greet, I guess.
It was weird. It was weird. I got a vibe too.
And so they talk a little bit, and then he tells Nate, "Don't screw this up between the relationship." Kind of like reminiscent to what Rebecca told Rupert about his relationship with his new wife. Yeah. And so we see that, and we see them kind of, Nate and Jay just, go about their moment. But then later on in the episode, we see Rupert approach Nate for a guys' night after the win of the match. And so they go out on their guys' night, and Rupert introduces Nate to 2 um, models, I guess, or two ladies who are there to join them for the evening. And I think this was a really watershed moment for Nate. I really
Yes.
do, because he realizes, and I think more so now in this at that moment than ever before, that Rupert isn't who he wants him to be. Rupert isn't
Right.
the guy who he thinks he is. And even though, yes, he does owe him a lot because he gave him a chance, he doesn't mean he has to
Turn into
um
him.
exactly turn into him,
I
go
mean,
along with what he's
honestly.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he Nate tells Rupert, I just came to tell you in person that I have something else come up and I'm leaving. So he goes back to his girlfriend's house and he just hugs her. And I thought that was no words were exchanged. He just gives her a big hug and embraces her and holds her tight because that's where his heart is and that's
Mm.
who he is. So I thought that was really nice.
Well, and you know what? In moments like those, I know that, we both have, I'm married and you're married as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we understand sometimes there's moments that transcend words,
Yeah.
and sometimes the best thing and easiest thing to do is just not say anything, but just hold each
Mm-hmm.
other. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that was one of those moments that kind of shows like, look, man, I'm like really serious about you and this is real and I want this to be real. But I just want you to be there for me. And so I think that for any people who maybe don't like Jade, I think that was a moment where she's pretty sincere
Yeah.
about her feelings for him. And I think like, those ladies weren't just models. Very clearly they were insinuating that they were going to take them back there and maybe perhaps they might
To
have
the
been
champagne room.
prostitutes
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
or
didn't think about
something
that.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Mm-hmm.
there were just some much darker intentions that
Mm-hmm.
Rupert had, right? That we pick up on, that Nate picks up on. I love how you mentioned Rupert is not the person that Nate wanted him to be, right? I
Right.
think he looked up so much to Ted, and when Ted let him down, he sort of, kind of like a leech, like he just leeched on to Rupert now, and he's like expecting
Mm-hmm.
Rupert to be this guy, sort of comparing him to Ted a little bit, or like, but he's never going to be that guy. Like he's not this hero.
Right.
He's just going to drag you down with him. And Nate is realizing that, and he doesn't like the person that he's becoming. And this is kind of the first right decision that he makes
Yeah. True.
in Rupert's face. So again, his redemption arc is coming. This is where Vader betrays was it
Palpatine.
Palpatine,
Uh-huh.
and Palpatine is sort of getting a sense of that. But that's good, right?
Yeah.
I think also rewind a little bit to whenever Rupert is meeting Jade. He's very like, it seems to be he's happy for Nate in that moment. And I think
True.
Nate was very obviously expecting that night to go very differently.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, Rupert was saying her name. He's like, "Oh, Jade, that's a great name, right? Oh, you're beautiful. Oh, I
You're
would
from.
almost say you're out of Nate's league."
Mm-hmm.
And like, who's the other person that said that to Nate, right? Think about it. Nate's dad.
True.
So we have sort of this father figure that is
Mm-hmm.
Rupert in Nate's eyes, another sort of father figure, repeating this line that Nate's already heard. And
Mm-hmm.
Jade, I just love this girl. Okay, this actor deserves more credit than she's getting. Okay. No one can do the RBF like her. Okay. And she saw right through Rupert. I do think she did. I think she
Yeah.
saw right through Rupert, right through his facade, right through his fakeness, because she just stares at him like, don't you say that I'm better than him. Like, don't tell me who I am. Don't tell me what I am.
Right. Right.
And she's just
Right.
like sizing him up. I think she's in danger. I think Rupert's going to come after her
I
or
think
their
so too.
relationship. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But then again, later on that day, when Rupert is inviting Nate to go have a guys' night, he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, nice meeting Kate or whatever her name
Yeah.
was."
Yeah.
Very clearly, like Nate realizes, "Oh, you didn't care that you met this really important person in my life. You can't even get her name right."
I think it just
So
shows Rupert as the billionaire or whatever he is that he only cares about it when she's in the room,
yeah, he
right?
can put on
When
a good front. He can put
yeah.
on a good whatever mask he needs to in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. But then, masks can only last for so long, and Nate
Right.
saw that.
Yeah.
So, oh man. Yeah, that was Nate is redeemable, man. I'm telling you. He's coming back to the bright side.
I think so. I think so. I was happy to see him walk out of there and not stick around for that. So,
Mm, mm. And
well,
Keely, let's see. Was there anything else? I'm trying to think. Are we missing something?
the only thing I wanted to end on was how they ended the episode. And that was the relationship that we learned more about with Colin and Isaac. So at the end of the
Oh, yes.
episode, Isaac shows up to Colin's house, and we learn that Isaac wasn't really mad about Colin being gay. He
Yes.
was mad that he was beat. Colin was lying to him for years.
Mm.
And I thought that was so telling as to why Isaac, if you know that in context, now you know that Isaac went into the stands to protect his friend,
Yes.
to go there to shut up the guy up because he was saying a derogatory term about his friend. And
Mm-hmm.
we learn that their friendship is more than just constrained to the confines of the locker room. It goes beyond
Mm-hmm.
that. So they know each other well. And Isaac wants to know why he couldn't trust him. And so Colin says, well, I was 99% sure I could trust you, but that 1% scared me. And
Yeah.
then and then Isaac says, I can't keep a secret. And Colin tells him, well, I was held the secret for many years, and I could only lasted a month after you found out. So
Yeah.
so it was they have a great friendship, and we learn that through that moment. And then we see them up there playing FIFA on the PlayStation, and they're just talking about who's the hottest in the locker room. What do you do in the shower? How do
They
you?
said Bumbercatch.
Yeah.
They both were like Bumbercatch. I'm like, I mean, okay, fair.
And Isaac was like, if I had to take a shower with women, I definitely have a boner.
Yeah, he was like, how do you do it? How
How
do
do
you
you
shower? And
do
he's like,
it?
I just look up and think about
Global
global
warming.
warming.
So
It was perfect though, because it shows, a lot of straight guys probably don't talk about stuff like that. A lot of straight guys
yeah,
don't have gay friends in general.
that's true.
Right. And so I think this was just a beautiful way to show like you can have gay friends, like
Mm-hmm.
they're human
They're
beings like all of
exactly
us.
right.
And just because they're gay doesn't make them any different. Like they're still going to play video games with you. They're still that
Mm-hmm.
same person before, as before they came out,
Yeah.
and so I love that too. And they're just playing FIFA or whatever. And it was a great moment to end on. Like things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also like metaphorical and very tangible for the real world. Like
Mm-hmm.
if one of your friends comes out, support them, be
Exactly.
there for them, whether
Mm-hmm.
you agree with it or whatever that means or not. They're still that same person. They're still a
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Exactly.
So I think it was just wonderful. And I mentioned it very early on, I did have a friend come out to me one time and I wondered the same thing. I was a little angry because I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? I thought it was my issue. I was making it about me.
Right.
Like how selfish of me to be upset in that moment when, this was a very, very difficult process that they had to go through. And Colin nailed it on the head. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter reacting to the way that he said that to Isaac too. Like it was never you.
Right.
There were so many opportunities that I could have come out, but I wasn't ready. The time
Mm-hmm.
wasn't right for me. It's not that I didn't trust you. It's just my fear got in the way.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very telling as to it. I mean, it's an instruction manual for if this happens to us in real life, I thought.
Yeah, that's very true. This show is educational. It really is. I mean, it doesn't
Mhm.
mean to be, but it's teaching. It's giving us teachable moments
Yes.
throughout. Yeah, so very true.
What a great way to end the episode. And I mean, we're almost at the end of the season too, at 2 episodes away, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot is going to happen. But this was one of the episodes, I think a couple of them I left feeling a little uneasy, like, oh no, what's next week going to bring? But this one, I got the end of it, I'm like, I feel pretty good. Like, we're going to be all right. Like, they're going to tie this up in a nice little, bow tie, and it's all going to be all right. So, how do you feel?
I feel good. I mean, I saw next week's like synopsis. It's the international game, so the players all spread out, go play for their home countries. So
Mm.
it should be an interesting episode. It might be one of like their one-offs or whatnot that they have. So looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they wrap up the whole season and see what kind of spin-offs will come from the show, because I know something's bound to happen, like a spin-off from it. Like it could be like the Keely Jones PR firm would be a great little spin-off show unto itself. Maybe she still works with the Richmond team and and other teams and where other clients, and or maybe it goes to following Roy Kent down some coaching path on a different team. I don't know.
I mean, maybe Roy Kent comes to the U.S. and coaches in the U.S. I don't know. You never know.
Right.
But I can't wait to see it. Just like I can't wait for next week's episode with the lovely return of Edwin Akufu.
That's right. That's right.
So
it should be interesting.
We shall see. But I love talking about this with you. It's fun every single week. I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as we do.
Yes, and thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this with everyone if you're enjoying it. That way we can, and ask us questions in the comments. That way we can answer them and we can have a conversation. So until next time, everyone, thank you, and we'll see you later.
Bye.